to our judges, and they will tell you a little bit about themselves as well.
I'm Aaron Huey, Math and Business Institute student from Montgomery College.
Pavanjot Rai, Math and Business Institute student as well.
Mason Ruckle here at Math and Business Institute scholar.
I'm Abigail Hollins, I'm at Math and Business Institute as well. I'm Kara Wiley, and I'm also in the Math and Business Institute.
Wow, goodness.
What is it y'all saying you are? I think it's a Math and Business Institute.
Math and Business Institute.
Slow down. I'm Kyle Hoffpower. I work here in town at Entergy. We're we're in electric power production and distribution, and serving 4 states down south here. And I went to LSU and graduated with an MBA also from Loyola, which is uptown. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Hi, I'm Annette Johnson. I'm with Prudential. I'm a director in the Global Business Ethics and Integrity Office, and my role is to develop and deliver ethics training throughout the company.
That's what I forgot to say. Did I say that I'm in the Ethics and Compliance Department? Oh yeah, I support our Ethics and Compliance Department. Well,
and I'm Jim Arnold. I'm a professor at University of St. Thomas, and I am the lead judge here for today. We're going to give you some ground rules that we just give to every single group so that the playing field is level. Now, in this part of the competition, you're going to be taking on a fictional business identity and assigning a fictional business identity to the judges. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out by, you're going to tell us who you are, what your fictitious role is, and then be sure to be very clear on who we are, who it is you want us to be. You're going to have 25 minutes plus a 5-minute cushion or so to finish your presentation, to describe the legal and the financial and the ethical dimensions of the problem, and to recommend for us a solution that's going to pass muster on all of these 3 counts. We're not going to interrupt you while you speak. We are going to hold our questions till the very end, and when we are finished, we will have a 20-minute question and answer session. During that Q&A session, we are going to stay in our role, whatever role that you are assigning us, and we're going to ask you to stay in your role as well. And after the Q&A, then we're all going to take a deep breath. We're all going to become ourselves again. And we're going to spend some time giving you some friendly feedback on your presentation, both the content and on the delivery as well. That will be given not in our Disneyland roles that we're going to be taking on in a moment. The ethical aspects of your analysis are the most important, and these need to be described in a very simple and practical and common sense fashion. In any reference or use of philosophical terminology or any religious or theological grounds are considered a weakness, and any member of the team that's reading his or her part and it doesn't look like you have documents that you're going to read, that's also considered to be a weakness, and although you may use notes in your presentation. Every one of you needs to have some sort of speaking role today, and I'm assuming that's going to happen. Do you have any questions for the judges before we start? Okay, I'm going to start again by telling us who we are, and then please start your presentation. Welcome and good luck.
Right, so we're a consulting firm, and you guys are the administration of the Washington Redskins, so board of directors and Dan Snyder.
Board of directors of the Redskins.
Yep.
Thank you. Anytime you're ready.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We are the Math and Business Institute, as we stated. My name is Aaron, this is Pavanjot, Mason, Abby, and Kara. And we are excited to be here today because we've spent the last 5 months analyzing your company and team, the Washington Redskins, and we've actually pinpointed an ethical problem within your business. And that comes to the area of your name. So your team, the Washington Redskins, has this current logo. And the logo, the problem lies within the logo itself. The fact of the matter is that the current name and logo of the Washington Redskins is offensive, it's derogatory, it's demeaning toward Native American culture and heritage. And this has been around for a very long time. It's a very controversial topic, and it's a severe ethical issue. But it goes bigger than that. We're going to go on to prove that this is actually very offensive to Native American culture. Even Americans today would not feel comfortable calling a Native American a Redskin. It has significant cultural implications. But it goes beyond just the ethics. While this is an ethical problem, it's also affecting your business on a different level. It's affecting the finances of your business as well as the legal perception of your business as well. So we want to take some time to look at these, but first of all, I want to present you with a solution. So we've come up with a proposal that addresses this issue that eliminates the issue on all three levels of ethics, legal, and finance, and actually gives you the opportunity for some financial gain as well as eliminating your legal trouble. And that solution is this. This solution is this. Change the name of the Redskins and rebrand the team. There's no opportunity better than now to rebrand the team. Currently, your name is synonymous with a racial insult, and that's starting to affect your business. You'll see in a few minutes that retail sales have declined by 43%, while the rest of the NFL has gone up. And we pinpoint that fact to the fact that your name is called the Redskins. People are offended by it. People aren't wanting to purchase your merchandise. They're protesting it by not buying. So this is significant. This is a significant problem that this solution solves, but it also gives you the opportunity to engage your fan base. So through this rebrand process, we don't just want to change the name. We want to involve the fans, i.e. the customer. So when you involve a customer, you build that sense of loyalty, you build that sense of engagement, and get them involved in this rebrand process to create a new name, a new logo that is not controversial, that's not bringing down your company, as you'll see in a few minutes, but actually presents you with an opportunity to take advantage of a situation that can bring your company to a new ethical level, but also take advantage of a new financial opportunity as well. So I'm going to pass it off to Pavanjot, and he's going to explain the benefits of the solution through the financial aspect, and he's also going to explain why you need to make this change now. Because if you don't make this change, your company is actually in a very detrimental position. So Pavanjot, you want to take it from here?
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Aaron. So first, we'll give you a financial overview of your team. You have a $2.4 billion evaluation. You brought in $143.4 million in operating income as of last year. And your brand, the Redskins, accounts for $214 million of that $2.4 billion evaluation, which is about 9%, a relatively insignificant part of your evaluation. Decreasing fan base, decreasing revenue. So market analysts analyzed the official Washington Redskins Twitter account, and they found that they had 319,000 Twitter followers. And once taking into account the affluence of a team in the DC metro area, they found that the team should actually have around 379,000 Twitter followers. That's about an 18% gap in the amount of followers that they should have. Now, although we know this is not their actual fan base, because not every Redskins fan is on Twitter, we can relate this to the fact that the Redskins name is so derogatory that people are starting to leave the team. Fans are starting to stop supporting the team. And this leads to decreases in revenue as well, because each fan contributes a certain amount of revenue to the team. Washington has the biggest sales decrease. So as of last year, Washington's sales decreased by 43%. Now keep in mind that your team's value is third in the NFL and top 10 in the world. So being first in a deficit for merchandise sales is a big deal. And when you're leading the league in that, you know that it's a problem with the team's name, because you know that the wins and losses have been accounted for year after year after year. The Redskins haven't been doing good for a while now, but the sales have been decreasing substantially over the past few years. This is showing the NFL and how the NFL has increased their sales last year of 3%. And as looking at the NFL, and their sales are increasing, and many other teams in the NFL sales are increasing, but the Redskins, a premier team in the NFL, a team that has led the NFL for decades now, has decreasing sales. It brings a cause for concern. And now we're going to transition to the opportunity cost. So opportunity cost is a net benefit of the next best option. It's what's not shown in your accounting books. This is an implicit cost. This is not accounted for in your financial statements. And when rebranding the name, when approaching it a different way, we found from our research conducted that you could bring in another $10 to $15 million a year. And that's a substantial amount of money. And when taking into consideration the fact that your name change is actually going to cost around $5 million, you're bringing in 2 to 3 times that revenue when you change your name through opportunity cost. But also consider the fact that you're also increasing your fan base, you're increasing your revenue, and if you are able to rebrand your image around a preferable player, let's say Ryan Kerrigan, let's say Alfred Morris, let's say someone who wasn't criticized constantly by the media like your name is, well, you would bring in extra revenue, and this $5 million cost is a one-time cost. It's a variable cost. You're only going to incur this cost when you change your name. And assuming that you're going to change your name only once after this time, your revenue is going to increase substantially for the years to come, but you'll never undergo this cost again. I think that's important to emphasize because it's a one-time cost, and you're not going to have it for years to come, but you'll get that $10 to $15 million every single year in an increase, as well as your merchandise sales may also increase in the future years to come. So the Washington Bullets in the 90s happened to change their name to the Washington Wizards because their name was under criticism from the media. And when they made this transition, they went under financial gains, and also their fan base grew substantially. Now, although we know that the NBA and NFL are two completely separate entities, we hope that when your team is able to make this transition, they go under a similar transition and are able to increase revenue and increase their fan base, which we're pretty sure will go under that same transition. Now, as an overview for the financial aspects, we know that if you grow your fan base, your revenue is going to increase. We already know that. But 43.8% in a decrease in merchandise sales is a massive deal. That's hats, that's jerseys, that's all the inventory that you're selling to your fans and your customers. And when you're third in the league in net value, but you're first in the league in a deficit in merchandise sales, it says a lot about what's going on inside the organization, and we hope that we can help you fix that. So the NFL sales are also increasing while your sales are decreasing, yet you're a premier team in the league. And we want you to stay that premier team. We're here to help you and help you keep that title in the league. So when you make this name change, you're also going to increase your brand revenue, which is extremely important. It's going to look good in your books, but it's also going to show that this name change is financially correct. This is a one-time cost of $5 million. You're not going to go through this cost again and again. It's not every period. It's not every year. It's not every 5 years. It's one time. It's the one time that you change the name for the better. And when you do, you're going to increase your revenue, increase your fan base, and have financial gains. So merchandise turnover is in regards to when you change your name, fans who are loyal to your team are going to want to buy that inventory that has the Redskins logo on that. And when they do buy that inventory, you're going to increase your merchandise turnover. Moreover, when you make that new brand, when you create that new image, that positive image that's going to make you look amazing in the media, you're going to be able to increase your revenue because these loyal fans are going to want to buy this new merchandise. Moreover, new fans from the DC metro area, for that matter, across the nation, are going to want to join your team in this revolution and starting this new transition and setting the standard for the NFL. And I really think it's important to realize that at this time, it's clear to see that financially, it's never been a better time to change your name. And I think the financial aspect has been made clear, and now I'm going to pass it over to Kara, and she's going to talk about the legal aspect of the Washington Redskins name change and why it's beneficial to change your name. So thank you.
Thank you, Pavanjot. Yes, as he said, I'm going to talk about the legal aspect of this case. And this might be the most prominent reason why the Redskins issue is in the minds of Americans today, because it all centers around the United States Patent and Trademark Office, or the USPTO. Now, for many years, the Redskins have had a history of cases with the USPTO, starting in 93, I'm sorry. So for the past 27 years, they've dealt with the USPTO, and they've had battles against them because the United States Patent and Trademark Office really does not like the Redskins name, never has. But currently, the case that's happening is Black Horse v. Pro Football, Inc. It was brought forward to the USPTO by 5 individual Native Americans. It's named for Amanda Black Horse, who is a Navajo and psychiatric social worker. She has been one of the most outspoken Native Americans about this issue and has been quoted as saying she does not believe Dan Snyder would call her a Redskin to her face. In June 2014, in a 99-page decision, the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board, the TTAB, ruled that the name is disparaging to Native Americans. The TTAB is the section of the USPTO that decides whether or not a company is allowed to keep its trademark. And so they ruled that they should cancel the Redskins trademark. They did this on 2 criteria. One was how many people it would affect. They said, quote, at a minimum, approximately 30% of Native Americans found the term to be offensive during the relevant time frame. So this was one of the most important parts of the case. They had to weigh the different sides to see whether or not there would be more than 30% would be offended by this in the relevant time frame. The second is the Lanham Act, which is the most prominent piece of trademark legislation the United States has. And this says, quote, no trademark shall be refused registration unless it consists of matter which may disparage persons living or dead, institutions, beliefs, or national symbols, or bring them into contempt or disrepute. Now, the Redskins have gone on record in saying this is a vague law as well as possibly unconstitutional. But recently, the Justice Department has come alongside the USPTO to defend the constitutionality of the Lanham Act and say that it actually is constitutional and that it does apply to the Redskins. So there's a lot of government backing for the USPTO's case right now. Now, you all have appealed this decision, but if you were to lose the trademark, you would lose a lot of things. You would lose the legal presumption of ownership of the trademark, you'd lose the nationwide scope of rights in the trademark, clearly you'd lose the federal registration symbol, and possibly most important, you would lose the ability to record the registrations with the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol Service. This would block importation or infringement of counterfeit foreign goods. Now, going back to what Pavanjot was talking about in the financials, if you guys were to lose the trademark and people were able to sell counterfeit goods here, the potential to lose revenue in merchandise would be substantial. Now, of course, every company has legal trouble, and they all want to know why should we care, because everybody budgets for legal trouble. But we believe that the world has changed and that they expect change. This is not like 27 years ago when you were originally dealing with the USPTO. There was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no hashtag, but we now live in a world where a tweet can start a revolution overseas. So we believe that you really need to take a different approach when it comes to the legal matter here. And because Americans can now be so vocal, it's getting very bad press. It's not just a regional issue in DC anymore, it's a nationwide issue, and people can speak out about it. And it's not just any people, it's politicians. Even President Obama says, if I were the owner of the team and I knew that there was the name of my team, even if it had a storied history that was offending a sizable group of people, I'd think about changing it. The nation now sees that the president does not agree with the team name from DC. Moreover, there was a letter from 50 U.S. senators to Roger Goodell saying, tribes have worked for generations to preserve the right to speak their languages and perform their sacred ceremonies. Yet every Sunday during football season, the Washington, D.C. football team mocks their culture. So both sides of the aisle can come together on this issue and say, this needs to change. So just to wrap up, the reasons that you should implement our solution and change your name, you would keep the rights to a trademark. You would keep the rights to use all of those things that I outlined. Especially, you would have the rights to your merchandise. You would get the revenue from that. You wouldn't have counterfeit goods. And then you would also end the nationwide bad press. Currently, you have bad press because it's in the news that this case is going on. But were you all to really lose it and the trademark would be canceled, the entire nation would see that the government does not agree with the team name from Washington, D.C. And so we believe that you all should take initiative to change that name before it's taken from you by the government. So now I'm going to pass it over to Abby and Mason, who are going to talk about the ethical issues regarding this issue.
Thank you, Karen.
All right, so to recap what Aaron mentioned earlier, the ethical problem at hand is that the Redskins' current name, your franchise's current name and logo, is offensive and disrespectful towards Native Americans at large. So to take a step back and give you a historical background on the term Redskins, for as an example, there's an article on the board, and I quote, the bottom of the article says, the state reward for dead Indians has been increased to $200 for every Redskin sent to purgatory. This sum is more than the dead bodies of all the Indians east of the Red River are worth. Now, this article here is just one of countless publications in which the term Redskins was linked with the brutal act of murder. And as we did further research in this, in the historical context of the term Redskins, we found that Redskins was often used to define scalping Native American men, women, and children, regardless of gender or age, for money. And this was very common in the 1700s and the early 800s. And so, in short, the term Redskins was used to describe the bloody red scalps of Native Americans. And this is an incredibly dark time in U.S. history, and yet every Sunday on national television this term is being used to describe an incredibly popular football team, which is yours. And so we found this from an ethical perspective very concerning and something that we felt we needed to bring to light to you. And in addition to this just being an ethical concern, articles like this one on the board have been, because due to the increase in internet and social media over the last 10 to 15 years especially, articles like this have been shared to a mass audience. This is no longer something found in history books or in newspapers. This is being shared all over the internet, especially by people who are not happy with your name and the mission behind your organization and your franchise. So that's why I wanted to bring this to light as a concern that has especially become prominent over the last 10 years. Mason?
Right, and to go off of that point, the Washington Redskins were named the Redskins in 1933. That was only 80 years after that previous article was written. And in total, that's just 150 years ago. That was not too long ago. So this derogatory name is being used every Sunday. Your company, a $2.4 billion organization, uses that name to represent your organization. But when we apply this term on a national scale, we find that 83% of the entire American population would not call a Native American a Redskin to his or her face. Now to go back on that, a $2.4 billion organization uses that name as its reputation. That's bad. And with all this negative publicity out there, like Pat and Jacques said, there's a lot of financial implications, and it's hitting your company very hard. But what we do is, as Math and Business Institute, we like to use Global Business Standards Codex. And this is a method in which we use different guidelines set forth by the GBS Codex that has 8 underlying ethical principles. And these are the 8 principles. And we're actually going to point out 4 of them today. The transparency and the dignity principle, which are 2 principles that you guys are not doing a great job at, and that we actually see great improvement from you guys if we take the right steps with you. The next is the citizenship and the responsiveness principles. And these principles are 2 principles that we actually think you guys are doing a pretty good job at, but if we take a turn with it, we can actually do much better with that and help improve your reputation. So first, the transparency principle. And let's read this article title, Transparency, the Truth, the NFL, and that team from Washington, D.C. And you see that they won't even use the term Redskin. And one actually pretty important thing is, like Abby said, on Sundays, the team name is used by the organization, yet so many prominent news organizations won't use the term on national television because they think it's embarrassing, they think it's derogatory, they think it's racially insensitive. And that's big. Again, a $2.4 billion organization that is really big on marketing and getting the name out there, the news won't even use it anymore. And what this article actually entailed was the organization was going out there and hiring different consulting firms to come up with these different websites to help skew the national image of the term Redskin, to help promote saying, oh, Americans do care about it, they want the name to stay the same. And when asked about it, you guys denied that this ever happens. And when the investigations went in to see if it happens, the financial reports came out and said that you guys were hiring these consulting firms to come up with these websites. And that's an issue. With a topic so sensitive to so many people, you guys were not being transparent about it. You weren't being honest with the American public about it. And that's an issue. But we feel with changes through our solution that, you know, we can promote transparency within the organization. And Abby's actually going to get to that in a few minutes through an internal committee. Next is the dignity principle, and this is just having respect and dignity for all individuals. And if we look at the images here, one of these images is, I'm a Cherokee, not a Redskin. And here, this is actually really important. These are different riots that are happening, and one interesting thing is the fact that when your team goes on away games to, say, New Orleans, when they come to the Superdome here, there was actually a riot outside the stadium that it was a protest, you know, with your team coming there. So players were getting off the bus, Robert Griffin III, Deshaun Jackson, these players were getting off the bus, yet being harassed by an off-the-field issue that shouldn't happen, especially when it's in your control of the organization. And this is the citizenship and responsiveness principle. And we actually believe you guys are doing a fairly good job at this. You're going out into the community and teaching kids how to read. You're teaching different charitable acts in the city, or the DC metropolitan city. And if we look at the mission statement here, this is the Washington Redskins Charitable Foundation. You guys take pride in core tenets of team, effort, and tradition. We want to maintain that. We want to keep going out into the community. But in this, we want to apply it to the Native Americans. Go out and help the Native Americans more. You guys have actually come up with an organization that has gone out to do that. Let's really promote that and embrace that, because that's something to be proud of. That's affecting the positive image of your company. And we see great light in this. This is an opportunity to just rebrand your organization and really get positive light in the media. All right, Abby, you want to talk about the solution real quick?
Yes, absolutely. So we have several solutions and initiatives that we believe will have significant positive financial impact on your franchise, as well as an increase in reputation, which right now is very important for your team. And first off, what we want to say is that our solution is that you take initiative and change your current name and rebrand your team. And the reason we say take initiative is because with this specific situation, legal implications, as Kara was explaining earlier, could come into play and force you to make this change in the near future. And that's why we're saying this is something you need to do here and now. And like Pavanjot said, there's no better time than now before more legal measures come into play, and this is something that's forced upon your team.
Right, and just a quick point on this logo, Maria Braveheart is actually a prominent figure in the Native American community right now. So one of the ideas that we have is embrace Maria Braveheart. Dan Snyder, you actually own the team name to the Washington Braveheart. So if you couldn't want to implement that, that's a positive way to go out there and really regain that reputation.
Exactly, yeah. That's why we use the term Washington Bravehearts is a great alternative to something that positively represents the Native American community. There's also the Washington Warriors. People have set forth a lot of ideas and designed logos like the one on the board. You know, in addition, there's different methods of implementation we believe you should do in the short term, in addition to just changing your name. And one of these is revamp and relaunch the Original Americans Foundation. Now, this is a foundation you launched several years ago as a way to give back to the Native American community and get involved and make this connection with them, which we think was a wonderful idea, and it's really important. But what we found is we did more research into this foundation. When you go onto your website, there's not a lot of information on what your measurements are and what you've done in the community, although there has been a lot. And we believe as you make this transition as a team, this is something you can promote to show that you have this connection with the Native American community and you're giving back to them. So we think this is something you should revamp and relaunch. And also, if your franchise decides it is time to change your name and you do want to rebrand your team, but you don't want to go the route of having something that represents Native Americans, you want to start fresh and new, we believe that rebranding your team into something that has a patriotic standpoint will work very well within the Washington, D.C. and larger area. Because it is the nation's capital, that really resonates with a lot of your fans in that region. So for example, using the red, white, and blue color scheme. And other teams that have done this and it's been very successful has been, for example, the Washington Nationals, which is a baseball team. They have the same color scheme. In addition, they have a patriotic name. And it's also the Washington Capitals, which is a hockey team, which has done the same. And it's worked out very well for those teams. And people in this area, which is your fan base, respond very well to that. And then lastly, involve your fan base through social media and use social media to your advantage as you do this rebranding process. And what we mean by that is allow them to share their ideas and initiatives and different logos that they think would work well for your team. And let them get excited and involved in this process rather than something that's abruptly put on them. And in the long term, we believe that as a way for your franchise to go above and beyond what's expected of you rather than just making a change and going from there, you can take a leadership role by proposing a change within your policies and your ethics committees. Launch an ethics committee within your franchise as a way to avoid situations like this in the future, that every year looks over different ideas or initiatives you have as a team and make sure there's nothing offensive or anything ethically concerning about this. And this is something that your team is lacking in currently, and we think it would greatly benefit you in the years to come, both financially and reputation-wise on a large scale. Aaron?
Perfect. Thanks, Abby and Mason. Once again, I just want to reiterate to you, like we've done over the past 20 minutes, why this is a problem. This is where the problem lies. The fact that your logo, your name, your brand is offensive to Native American culture. And it's bigger than I think a lot of people think. As we've shown you through the research and through the data we presented, people are offended by this. It's an insensitive racial slur. People are protesting it all the time. And it's bigger than just an ethical issue. It'd be one thing if it was merely just a moral standard that you're not living up to, that we'd like to encourage you to, but like we pointed out, it's affecting your business. Pavanjot stated in his financial section, you have lost 43% of your retail sales over the last year due to this fact. While the rest of the NFL is rising, you're decreasing. You are in the top 5 teams in the NFL. There shouldn't be a reason for that. So we want to re-engineer that process. We want to rebrand the team and apply this solution. This rises you to an ethically sound level. This rises you to a legally sound level. It eliminates the fact that you might actually lose the rights to your name. So rather having someone force that upon you, take the initiative, move forward in an ethical manner, and rebrand the team. And we talked about toward the end how to engage the customer, engage the fan base with this rebrand process. That will build the loyalty. That will increase your fan base. So stop pushing away your current fans with this controversial topic that is your team name, but rather welcome in a new generation of customers, a new generation of fans that can rally around a symbolic logo, a symbolic brand that they can believe in, that they can support, that they can root for when they go to the games, and ultimately will give you the opportunity for future financial gain. So thank you very much for listening to our talk today. We hope you consider our proposal, and we hope you see now how this proposal is the only way that you can rise your company to a new ethical standard, take advantage of a very lucrative opportunity, and of course eliminate any legal trouble you're currently experiencing. Thank you very much for your time.
Start some questioning, and I'll just start out with a quick one here. As a board member of the Washington football team, why do you think we haven't made this change before?
I think because you have a lot of support for this name, and maybe it's just because you like the name itself. And initially, I mean, it's really your decision. It's just kind of like a free speech kind of thing. This is what we like. But it's starting to affect your company in a level that maybe hasn't been brought to light yet. It's really just a controversial issue in the news right now. But as we've presented, it's affecting your company on a financial level, and even in the legal section where you might be forced to do this. So rather than being forced to do it, taking the initiative to do it now is why it's coming to light as to make that.
Okay, well we see all the protests. We know all we know all this stuff. I've gotten phone calls. I hear all this, but yet we haven't done it. So therefore, maybe there's a reason. Why do you think that we haven't done it yet?
I think the biggest reason is the fact that you guys have had this name for 80 years. In 1933, the name was named the Redskins. But like Aaron said, you guys haven't had these financial implications 10 years ago. They just started because, society's really evolving. And it's the fact that it's affecting your company today that, you guys have lost 43% of revenue because of the name. When it's in the media, that's affecting your company negatively. And we think it's time that we move beyond this and really just revive your organization, because this is the perfect opportunity for you guys.
What is your source for the analysis that shows a cause and effect between the name and the loss of revenue?
Right. So when we were looking at the financial analysis, they took into account from 2010 to about 2013, the revenue of that time. And then when they started taking the revenue of when the actual name controversy was happening, which was June 2014, and what they found was there was the drastic decrease in revenue of 43%. So they took it in a period when it wasn't big in the media, and then when it really shot up, and they found that drastic decrease.
So it sounds like the media's driving it, really.
Right, but the reason why the media is also driving it is because a lot of the public is outraged by it. It's because there's all this.
And that was my next question. The 30%, what was that again? About 30% Native Americans find it offensive? But
yes.
What's the source of that? How was that percentage arrived at?
I'm not very sure how the percentage was arrived at, but I got that quote directly from the 99-page decision from the TTAB. So
the TTAB?
The Trademark Trials and Appeals Board.
Okay.
They're the subsidiary of the United States Patent and Trademark Office. And so they're the ones who made this decision in June 2014, and that's a quote from them that's saying one of their reasonings for filing and canceling the trademark of the Redskins is because it seemed that there was evidence to show that within the relevant time frame, more than 30% of Native Americans found the name disparaging.
I was just curious if there was a survey or...
So I agree. The media kind of drives what's the hot topic. As long as they latch onto it and keep it in front of us, that's what people pay attention to. So how do we not know that this is something that's just going to blow over in time and won't even be an issue? We have had the name since 1933.
Because this is the first time in history where it's actually becoming an issue. This was about a year ago where it's been, boom, every night there's been news articles about it, there's been news segments about it, and it's still in the media today. There's articles written last week about it. And the fact of the matter is, you guys are seeing the drastic decreases in revenue, and it's not going up. This was a year ago. It's still in the media. Your revenue is decreasing. It's just it hasn't made the transition yet, and you guys are still falling. But the thing is, this is the perfect time to do it because you guys haven't had great on-the-field performance. All this media is out there about it, but it's the perfect time for this because you're going to have increases like Pavanjot said with the sales of Redskins merchandise, and it's the opportunity to sell new merchandise to the fans.
So why not just focus our money on improving performance? Because if performance improves, then we kind of go back to the
well, no, like I had answered to him, it's not that performance is driving this because the Redskins haven't been great for a while, but it's the fact that it's in the media so much that it's been driving it down. So it's not really an on-the-field issue, it's more of an off-the-field issue, and that's affecting all of your players. Robert Griffin III, Deshaun Jackson, all these prominent players in your organization, they're being affected by this, and your revenue, bottom line, is being affected.
Right. Our players are being affected by this how?
Like I said, when the players get off the bus, they feel that they've been harassed. Robert Griffin III has come out and said...
clear on that.
Right. Aaron, did you have a point?
Yeah, I was just going to bring up, you mentioned, why don't we just focus on the performance, or why are we focused on the money? There's been lots of examples in history with other sports teams like Pavage brought up, where they weren't performing well at all, the Bullets in 1997, but through that rebrand, they've been better ever since. And there's been other examples too, where a rebrand, a refresh, a restart is that really kickstarts the business again. And I mean, this is the time to do that, because like we said from the legal section, you might be forced to do it, and that looks even worse than you taking the initiative and doing something that's actually very positive.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? How can the government, I mean, how are we so sure that the government is going to force us to change our name?
Right.
Right, well, I know, I mean, it's the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board who have say over whether or not they can keep the trademark, they can cancel it or not, depending on the Lanham Act, as I had discussed. And that the constitutionality of that act is what's in play. So the Justice Department has come in and stepped in and said, we will defend the constitutionality of the Lanham Act and say that this does apply to the Redskins, and say that this is a disparaging name. And if it is a disparaging name, then under that Lanham Act, they may not have that trademark.
Which ultimately results in things like losing the trademark means they can still sell the merchandise and things like that, but they'll also have counterfeit sellers like taking advantage of merchandising and revenue opportunities that is yours and should be yours. So for you to let that happen would hurt you even more. So that's why taking the initiative now really is the best opportunity for it.
On the ethical issue, now, I want to make sure I phrase this right. Certainly, you make a great case business-wise. You make a pretty good case legally. Now, any ethical argument is going to be very multi-layered. If it's cut and dried, it's not. I mean, it's a right and wrong issue. It's very simple. Then there's an argument about where does the ethical complexity come in. What I'm hearing you say is that it's just plain wrong because it is offensive to a minority group. Okay, now that totally makes sense. But where's the gray area then? I mean, so your only reason is that it offends a certain ethnic group, right? So where's are you just saying that it's just plain wrong and there's nothing more we can think about it? There's nowhere to go on this?
The gray area isn't like leeway, like how far can you go into it, like what's too offensive? Is that what you're talking about? Like,
I'm just saying, it's easy to say, well, that's just plain wrong.
For instance, are there other interests of other people who may be offended by, taking away a name that they feel a connection to? Why isn't that? Why would you consider? Maybe that's wrong.
And let's add to the piece that 70. No, math is not my subject. 33% of Native Americans find this offensive. Well, talk to me about the 60-some% that didn't find it offensive. What about that?
The fact is that Redskin, the term itself, while it may offend certain people, it may not offend certain people, the fact it has such a deeper meaning than that. And you are the Washington Redskins, you're the nation's Capitals team, being represented by such an offensive term. While it doesn't have as strong significance as it did 200 years ago, it certainly has still some significance today. It refers to something that was just totally wrong back in that time. It would be just to represent your nation's Capitals team with the term Redskin is, while you're offending this certain people group over here, it's representing something that your company should not represent.
Yeah, and to go on that, there aren't people going to the other 31 teams and protesting their names. There's something significant here that the Washington Redskins have this racially insensitive term. I mean, they're not going to the Philadelphia Eagles and saying, change the Eagles because that's racially insensitive. But there's something different about the Redskins in that people do find it insensitive. They're offended by it. And of course, like we said, it's taking down on the financial aspect of your company. And it's just something that needs to change in that just other teams are not having this issue. And we believe it's just the perfect time to do it.
Would you say to me if there would be there was no decrease in sales and there will be no change in our sales, if you take away the business argument, now we strip it right down, why would we want to listen?
because this is a group of people that have been massacred. I mean, when the people from Europe came to the Americas, they were massacred. I mean, there's a trail of tears. There's such this feeling from the American public that they see that Native Americans have suffered great atrocities in their time. I mean, Native Americans are in reservations. You see in affirmative action that they have preference in regards to college admissions and other areas in job employment. It's something different about this Redskins issue that's affecting you guys on an everyday basis. It's in the media. People are offended by it.
Okay, we're at the question and answer time. Thank you again. We certainly enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Let's just give you some, we're stepping out of our roles now as the defensive maybe owners of those Washington Redskins or the board of directors. I just want to talk to you guys as professionals in this industry about a few things.
Yeah, can we start? Yeah, I have some notes, let's see. Okay. And this is kind of jumping around. I like your the example from another team's experience. Though I'm not that conversant in what happened with that team, but if it is such that the change of the name helped, I mean that's a way to show here's another experience that we can compare this to, and here's that might be a way to judge what this team's experience may be if it changes its direction. Right. I thought you did a good job of focusing on the audience's motivators by focusing on business and profits and so forth, because assuming that's what what the folks on the board are concerned with is the profitability and the viability of the business, and that's what they're looking after from a fiduciary standpoint. You did a good job of focusing on that in your presentation. Aaron, I thought you were a little heavy-handed. At first when you came out and said, it's unethical. Whether it is or not, I was thinking, well, maybe lighten up the tone a little bit when you're talking to the people who are passionate. But I appreciate your passion.
Thank you.
I like that you used a code, that you went and found a code to evaluate the ethical aspects and picked out some, a handful of the code's criteria to use to do that. And you address the cost of rebranding and the financial benefits of doing so. And I also like that ultimately that you recommended a solution that sounded like it was intended to continue what I think is the intended tribute to Native Americans, rather than say, get rid of the whole Native American thing, or that picture's bad, and you came up with a solution that I think the owners would have a hard time saying, well, that's a bad idea, and I thought that you fielded the questions with confidence.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought you did an excellent job. There was a very clear opening and there was a very strong close, which I appreciated very much. I agree only from the sense that you don't want to offend people in your audience, so you have to be balanced. Yes. But I really appreciated your passion because it showed me the balance that I find is often missing between financial impact and just business integrity. So putting the financial impact aside, you're saying this is wrong. These people have been wronged. Using their names to capitalize off of it is wrong. So I really appreciated that. But I do agree with the fact that that could be perceived.
All right, I'll put it down.
Yeah, but just a tad, not a lot. Just a tad. So I love the way you work together. I mean, there's 5 of you. That's for a 30-minute presentation. And logistically, you all handled that very well. Your trade-offs were good. You complemented each other in terms of where you picked up the message. I really like the fact that you came back, you had a strong opening, and you came back and you gave a strong close. I thought that was really good. And there was a lot of emotion in this, and you appeal to that. You appeal to our potential to rise up from a character perspective, from a business integrity perspective. You appeal to that inner human being piece, which I think is so much needed in the ethics space. I said this earlier, it's not just about business ethics, or ethics is not just about, the bottom line, the financial impact and the regulation and the things that are out there. It's about the character of a company, and it's about what they choose to do in sticky and tough situations. And I think you made a really, really strong case for us to step up to the plate and re-examine that.
Absolutely. I thought I totally agree with Annette. Your passion was wonderful, and that's a great thing. And I'm also going to say that we didn't pay you all this money as consultants to come and bitch at us. So I'd like to see you treat us with a little bit more respect as the owners of the Washington Redskins.
We did take
and
the meeting.
And we should have taken the meeting. I'm only talking about your future as consultants. When you talk to your audience, you always want to be with your audience. You never want to be at your audience. So, but please don't lose your passion. That's fantastic. Now, so I really like that. The ethical piece, it's just as Annette said, and that's what led to my question. Let's strip everything away, because your business case is fantastic. I mean, good Lord, you can't even make a better business case than that, assuming all your data is correct, and I am. So it's so the whole idea is what's left, as Annette was saying, and what about character? What about soul? What are your duties to humanity? And it goes beyond. It goes beyond dollars, and that is your argument, and I think you made that very well. And try to slow down a little bit. Again, your passion sometimes made it. You were talking very fast. People can't necessarily hear and process at the same time. There's a theory out there that says that just like a tank of a toilet, you know how it has to go down when you flush. Well, there's a theory that every 17 seconds that your brain does that. It has this flap that opens up for a nanosecond. And while that's open, your audience cannot take in any information. No human can take in more information. So that's why we need you to talk a little slower, pause now and then, give us a chance to digest your excellent material so that we can open up to the next. Because if you go too fast, you don't want to lose your audience. Again, and then one last piece, and that is this especially applies to an older audience. And what are we in our late 20s? Well, let's just go with that. Yeah,
speak for yourself.
Let's just go with that.
Much up there than I was.
Yeah. I will guarantee you this will serve you well, and that is that you're referring to other adults as you guys is a generational thing. And it's okay for you to do this when you talk to people in your generation. When you talk to people in our generation, that's considered, or could be considered, an offensive sort of thing. Because the term you guys, when we were your age, referred only to guys. You would never say you guys to a group that included a group of women. And so it's considered very, it's actually considered offensive to an older audience. So until the day when us old folks are in diapers in a nursing home and we're irrelevant, remember that we're here and we don't always appreciate the you guys term.
Right. That's helpful.
Yeah, I think that's very good feedback. And as often as you can use the name, I think at one point I wrote down somebody said your franchise. I think that was as personable as you got. So I think using the name of the organization would have been just that much more powerful.
Yeah, the idea was to not say Redskins, you could say Washington or the Washington.
Yeah. Good. But great, I hope this feedback was helpful. It was so enjoyable to watch you.
Yeah, I
so knowledgeable.
I was in the competition last year. Your question at the end was actually a really good question, because that just gets rid of every other factor, just breaks down, is this an ethical issue or not?
Yeah.
I love that question.
And actually, if you have time for a question, what were you kind of hoping for us more to say? Like, were you hoping for us to, like, talk into what you're saying, like, what do you owe to mankind, what do you owe to humanity? Or were you
let's take the business argument out of it, because and that is the subtle nuance of ethics, is you can't really take the business piece out, but you have to for just a minute if you're going to examine it over here. Sure. And then you try and take it and you put it back into the business context and say, okay, now what do we do? And unfortunately, there are no clear answers. But what I was trying to get at was to peel back the onion a little bit and say, what are some things to look at? And then all of a sudden, somebody said something about the tuition breaks for, or what was it?
I said college admission.
College admission.
For affirmative action for Native Americans.
Yeah, that sort of thing bolsters your argument, because we're already seeing that on a number of different fronts that this is being shown as an important issue. So how can we do positive ethical things over on this side by having these things that we are helping this group with to the extent that we can, and then this over here that we're shooting them down at the same time.
Right.
So there becomes a weighting issue in ethics.
I like that question.
But I sure enjoyed it. What a wonderful professor you have. I totally agree. You have great students. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.